A recent conversation made me wonder if I could produce this effect in Fusion, i.e. the glowing line around the shape. I produced this sample video which prompted millions of requests for a tutorial. Well, there were 3 anyway. And as the saying goes, your wish is my command. So here's the tutorial. So the first thing we need to do is get our Fusion composition. So make sure your effects library is turned on, come down to Effects, Fusion Composition, and just drag it into your timeline. Mine defaults to 8 seconds, which is long enough for what we were doing. Select it and jump into Fusion. So in Fusion, the first thing we're going to do is drag in some sort of picture that we want to use as the shape. In this case, I've used a musical note. Because it's not the same resolution as our timeline, I'm going to merge it onto a background. Which will make it conform to the timeline resolution. As you can see, it's a little bit big. I could use the merge node to resize it, but for some reason I chose to go with a scale node. So shift space to open your select tool, type scale, and bring it in. We can now use the settings in the scale node to shrink our note to the size that we want it. So we can move this off to the side. Nothing's going to be connected to it. So what we need to do is basically trace the outline of our shape. You can either use a polygon line or a B-spline for this. I chose to use the B-spline because I just find it easier to work with. So drag your B-spline into your node tree. Again, you don't need to connect it to anything because you can work with it disconnected. So we're going to increase the size of our viewer so that we've got plenty of room and we can see what we're doing. As you can see, while you're over the viewer, your cursor becomes a plus sign. This is where your sort of points will be. So put your plus sign where you want your points and click to drop the points and work your way around and build up your outline. The B-spline's slightly different to the polygon line in that you have 2 lines that you're working with. The red line that you see here is the actual outline of your shape, and the yellow lines are a framework, if you like, that the shape hangs on. You use the points or the nodes on the yellow lines to adjust your outline. So you'll basically work around dropping points and adjusting, doesn't have to be 100%, but as close as you can get it, your outline until you have the shape of your object completely enclosed. This is really tedious, takes a while, so I'm going to speed this up so that you don't have to sit through 10 minutes of me messing about with a B-spline tool. So drop your points and use your yellow lines to pull out and adjust so you get a good fit. Eventually you'll work your way all the way around your shape and come back to your original point. When you get back to your original point, if you hover your cursor over it, it will turn into a circle. Click and that will close your shape for you. So we now have our outline. This is effectively a mask, the same as a rectangle or an ellipse. It's just a fancy shape. We don't need our picture anymore, so we can delete that. At the minute you can't see anything from this node until we drop it and merge it onto a background. If we now view the background, we have our shape. What we're going to do now is change the colour of our shape so that it is whatever colour we desired. In this case I've gone for orange. Entirely up to you what colour scheme you use. So here's our shape. The next thing we need is the little wormy thing that crawls around the outside. To do that I'm basically going to copy the shape in the background. So Command C, Command V to copy and paste it. And now if we select this second B-spline node, we're going to uncheck solid. So this, if we view it, makes an outline rather than a solid shape. Once we have the outline to the desired width, we need to get rid of most of it. And the way we get rid of most of it is with the length setting. If we pull the length all the way back, it disappears, and we adjust it so that we've just got a little piece of it really. We don't need much. So here's our shape, and what we're going to do now is animate it. The way we're going to do that is make sure we're on frame 0, and we're going to come over to the position setting. We're going to keyframe at frame 0, pull all the way to the last frame and move the position right to the end. This will automatically keyframe the end of our animation. If we now play it through, you can see our little worm thing happily poodles around the outside of our shape. Again, we can come into the background and change the colour. Now if we merge our line onto our shape and view the merge node, you can see the line going around the outside of your shape. So once we've got that set up and we're happy with it, we're now going to use that to drive a particle system, a very basic particle system consisting of a particle emitter and a particle renderer. Nothing fancy. Now what we need to do is get this particle to look like our worm. At the minute it's in 3D, so we will change it to 2D, so you've got a flat particle system on the screen, but it's still not anything like a worm. To do that we need to pipe the worm into the particle emitter. At the minute we can't, because the particle emitter doesn't know that it's expecting an input, so we need to change that. So go to your particle emitter, go to your region and change the region from sphere to bitmap. Now we get an input that we can connect our worm to. At the minute you can't see it, but there are particles appearing in the right hand screen. If I press play, you can just start to see them appearing, following the outline of our note. So now we need to tweak the particle emitter so that we can actually see our particles and have them usable. So the first thing we do is go to the Style tab and change from point to blob. In this graph here, size over life, we're going to put them at maximum size at the start, dropping down to 0 at the end. Now we're starting to see the particles a bit better, but clearly not enough. So if we come into the Control tab, the first thing we can do is adjust the number from 10 and crank it up to about 1000. Again, we need to wait for the renderer. And there you go. So now we've got something approaching our worm. If you notice at the end it fades off, and that's because of the size over life. that we set a minute ago. Clearly the line's too long at the minute, so the way we shorten it is that we reduce the life of the particles. And now we have something approaching our worm. So now we need our worm to be the right colour, so choose colour from region in the colour drop down menu. And now we have a nice yellow worm. If we merge this back onto our shape, you can see the worm now looking a bit better. It still looks a bit particly, so in order to sort of address that, we're going to add a blur node, which we just drag and drop onto our line. What I didn't do at this point is put the blur node in the view window, so I'm fiddling around with it and can't see any changes. I will cotton on eventually. So as you can see, the particles here. What I'm doing is adjusting the blur, but you can't see it until now. So now we need to bring the blur down so that you've got some detail but not too much. The last thing I'm going to do here is add a soft glow, so shift space to open your toolbar, soft glow, and select. Putting the soft glow in the view window, and we can adjust to taste. However glowy you want your worm, this is where you'll do it. Cool, and that's basically the effect. From here on in, we're sort of going to look at bells and whistles, and the first bell and whistle is to take it into a 3D environment. And to do that, we're going to grab an image plane, and we're going to pipe the merge node, into our image plane. If we then view this in the window, here is our lovely musical note in 3D space. Quick talk, I think, to sort of let you know to navigate around 3D space. Middle mouse button clicked on its own will let you drag around. Alt or Option and the middle mouse button lets you rotate, and Control or Command and the middle mouse button lets you zoom in and out of your 3D scene. So the first thing I want to do is lay the musical note down. So x-axis -90, and it'll lay flat on the ground. You don't need to do this, I just find it easier when I'm sort of working out the sort of animation and stuff. So now we're going to start to build our 3D scene. Any 3D scene needs a 3D merge and a 3D renderer. This will convert your 3D scene into 2D and make it viewable in the timeline. We're also going to stick a camera in. The first thing we're going to look at is animating the view of our object. So we have our camera, which we will raise up a little bit and pull back a little bit, and the right hand viewer is seeing what the camera is seeing at the minute, which is not very much. what we want is for the camera to see our shape. So I am going to check use target, which will make the camera look at coordinates 0, 0, 0, which is the middle of your 3D space, which happens to be where our shape is. What I want to do is have the camera rotate around the shape whilst continuing to look at the centre of the 3D scene. You can animate a perfect circle, but it's a pain in the bum. The way I choose to do it is with expressions. So if you go to the X and right click, pick expressions, and then in the box type sine brackets time divided by 15 brackets times 5. Type it exact, it's case sensitive, and Fusion doesn't tolerate mistakes. We're now going to do the same with the Z axis, except this time we're using cos brackets time divided by 15 times 5, and this will, when I realise I've made a mistake, give us a nice circular path, which when we play the camera will follow. If for some reason your image is too small like this, you can use the focal length, much like on a camera, to zoom in and get your object to the right size. So now we've got our camera and we can see our object. The next thing we need to do is light it, and I want to light it as though the worm is actually lighting the object. So I'm going to bring in a spotlight, and much as we did with the camera, we're going to use target. So we're going to get the spotlight to aim at a target. So in the render 3D node, we're going to turn on lighting. We're going to go back to our light. We're going to use the Y translation wheel to lift the light up. This makes it point directly down at our object. At the minute at 0, 0, 0, there's the camera's target and the light's target, and we don't know which is which. So don't start pulling arrows and things yet. Once we've zoomed in, gone back to frame 0 so that our worm starts at the beginning, we're going to move the light's target. So click your light, your spotlight, and using the wheels on the target, just move it slightly so that you can see it. Once you can see it, you can start using the arrows that are attached to it to move it and position it over the start of your animation. Once we've got it there, we can have a look at the settings for our light, which are under the control tab, so we can change the cone angle, i.e. how wide the light beam is. What I ended up doing was having a fairly small cone angle but increasing the penumbra angle. I just found this gave a softer light and it looked better. I also raised it up a little bit. Again, it's tweaking settings, it's stuff that you would do yourself to your own taste really, to give the effect that you're after. Maybe in the next tutorial I'll do less tweaking, or tweak off camera, because it gets a bit boring, sorry. So once we're happy with where our light is, we're going to start animating it. To do that, we're concentrating on the target wheels in the control tab, in the transform tab, and we're going to keyframe the X and Z axes because they're the ones that we're moving. The Y axis won't move, so don't worry about it. So we're going to come forward a couple of frames, move our target forward another couple of frames. In fact, we're going to go forward a lot of frames this time because we're going up a straight line, so we don't need to do it every couple of frames. As we get to the top where it curves, then we have to do it more frequently. So we can bring our target up to our worm, and then as we come round the top, we keyframe every couple of frames. Anywhere you've got a curve, keyframe more often. If you've got a straight line, less often. Again, much like when we built the shape, I've whizzed through this because it's a bit tedious, but you have to do it yourself, I'm afraid. So again, you'll come all the way around back to the very last frame and position your light. We can now hit play, and you can see your worm travels around your object and lights it as it goes. A very cool effect, but it could be better, and so we will make it better. The first thing I'm going to do is add some ambient light, so shift spacebar, ambient light, and we will pipe this into our merge 3D node. What this does is basically it lets us see the shape, not just the light. But we don't want to see the shape too harsh, so bring it down so that the shape's just about visible. Again, we'll tweak settings as we go along to get a better sort of look. So again, sorry, fiddling with the main spotlight. And I'll also tweak the ambient light to try and get a nice balance between the sort of brightness of the spotlight and the sort of background light on the object. Yep, I think that's not too bad at all. So if we quickly jump into the edit tab, let the red line turn blue so that it caches the fusion comp, and then we can have a look at it at full speed. To all intent and purposes, that's the end of the tutorial. This is the effect that we were after, but what I'm going to do is sort of add some extra bits in just to make the scene look, I think, better. And I'm going to do that by adding in a couple of particle systems. Now if you want to build your own particle system, I'll leave a link at the top to a video where I build a steam system, but on this occasion I'm going to cheat and use the built-in templates. So if you go to Effects Library, Templates, and then Particles, down the bottom you will find Steam. So we will add a pre-made steam system into our comp. These bottom 3 nodes here we don't need, so we just delete them. We'll pipe the output from the particle renderer into our merge 3D, and you can see the steam appear in our 3D window, and you can just make it out in our view window here. It's dark, you can't see it because it's not illuminated, so we need to do something about that. And what we're going to do about that is we're going to add another spotlight. This spotlight will be for the steam and doesn't sort of impact on anything else. The way we get it to do that is we again use a target system, and we're going to have it spin around with the camera so that the steam is always illuminated on the side that the camera is facing. So we will use the translation Y wheel just to lift it up some, and we will select use target. Now this time we're going to leave the center of the 3D scene as a target, and we're going to animate the light, and we're again going to make our circle with expressions. So right click on X, pick expression, and type this in the box. Again, it's case sensitive, be accurate. Fusion won't let you do it otherwise. Same with the Z axis. Now, because we've used the same expression as with the camera, the light sits underneath the camera and faces the same direction. You can see the 2 circular paths. So the steam's always illuminated. At the minute the steam's too heavy, so if you come into the fast noise node, into the color tab, you see this gradient. The white end is selected by default, and we're going to drop the transparency on the white end. You need to be patient here because the renderer needs a bit of time to work as you're adjusting. So we're going to drop the transparency a long way so that we can see through the steam. As you can see, this has the effect of blowing out the light, so we need to come into our spotlight and reduce the intensity, and we're going to tweak it the same as we did with the spotlight on the worm until we get the desired lighting. Again, I reduce the cone angle and bring the penumbra angle up because I just think it gives a nicer, softer light and works better in this sort of instance. So the steam is an addition, I suppose, a sort of adjunct. It's not the main star, so we don't want it too prominent. Next we're going to adjust the colour of the light so that the steam matches in and blends in with our colour scheme. So that's way over the top, so again drop the intensity right down. And there you go, we have steam. Now as you hit the play button, you can have a cup of tea between frames. So if you go to the playback menu, go to proxy mode and drop it to 1/4, it will slightly degrade the image in your view window, but it lets it play a lot faster and you can get a sense of what's going on. So I'm going to add in one more particle system, and this time we're going to pick glitter. So drag your glitter preset into your node graph. It's a group, so double click it to open it, right click on the title and click ungroup, just so that you can work with it a bit easier. Again, the last two nodes in this tree we don't need, so we can delete them. I'm going to keep the merge because it's got lighting attached to it for the glitter that we don't want to affect anything else. Drag from the merge into our main merge 3D, and boom, there you go, you've got glitter everywhere. And as you play through, you've got your smoke, your steam and your little worm going round your shape. Now we come back into the edit screen. I'm going to turn proxy mode off, and I'm going to go and have a cup of tea because it took a while for this to cache. Okay, we're cached, and if we hit play we get a wiggly worm light thing in all its glory, and that's pretty much it. I rendered it out and tagged it onto the end of the demo sequence, so you can sort of see the full effect. The lightning and these things were made with the polygon tool. There was no tracing involved. The treble clef again was traced, and I put 2 worms on this one, which was easy enough to do. And then we have our musical note. So I hope you liked it, I hope you found it useful, and feel free to subscribe, like and hit the bell thing, that would be nice, and hopefully see you again soon.